You are you. And this isn't some, I'm not trying to sound poetic or anything, but you are you, and you are the only person who is you. What does that really mean? It means that you are the person viewing life through your own eyes, hearing life through your own ears, right? You're the soul in your own body. And you're not in another person's body. You're not in my body. You might be listening to my voice, but you are using your own ears. And what does this really mean? It means that, presumably, tomorrow you're going to wake up and you're going to be you. So you should probably make your life good so that you like being you. You like waking up and being you and living wherever you are and doing whatever you want, right? Also, at the end of the day, you're not another person, so just say if someone tries to make you jealous or something, sure, you can be jealous about the position another person's in, the things that they have, but you're not them, and they're not you. And I've always thought, I am the best because I'm me. And I don't mean that narcissistically, or foolishly. I know I'm not the strongest person who can lift the most amount of weight. I know I'm not the smartest, like a chess master or something like that. But because I am me, to myself, I'm the best. And again, it's not in like a blowing up my ego. It's in like we're here. I may as well make the most of it. And also, I'm going to be the most like myself that any person is. And the way you understand this is, if you get really good at something, like I'd probably rather eat my own cooking because it's my own, because it's catered to my own flavor, right? When I make music, I listen to it and I think, yeah, that's kind of cool. And it's not as maybe experienced and as intricate and such as someone else's music, but it is mine. It has a flavor of myself into it, and I like that. So you kind of have to be your own, I don't know, almost your own best friend, your own cheerleader, your own support network. And you have to support and care and believe in yourself, because you're always going to be you. Even if you, I don't know, reincarnate, or you maybe phase off into some other dimension, or maybe turn into a robot or something, I don't know. You're always going to be yourself. So it's good to maybe get to know you, maybe, as I said, believe in yourself, appreciate yourself. And after that, people can't really make you all that jealous, or, I'd never want to be another person, really, is the best way I can put it. Anyway, I hope you kind of get what I'm saying, as in, you are you, and you're always going to be you. Alright, so on sleep positions and directions, actually. Position-wise, assuming you are laying down, if you lay on your back and your left side, these are both positive positions, while on your front and your right side are negative positions, meaning that the energy goes up or is heating on the body. Usually if you're on your back, the energy goes up to the brain. So if you want to be, say, very intelligent, think a lot, then you lay on your back. Though the negative of this is that, you're going to overthink. You're going to be mentally stimulated and you're not really going to fall asleep. So if you want to do things like, dream and imagination work and all that, you go on your back, because you can think and you can, astrally project and all that stuff. While on the left side is the heating and drying side. So this is if you want more heart energy, you can say. So you can kind of think the back is the head, the left side is like the heart. Right, so it goes down a step. So it's very heating on the body and very drying. So you will, just say if you have too much fluid, you can go on the left side to dry yourself out. Traditionally, the back was used, sages and like priests and scholars and such would be on the back, the wise men, right? And the kings would be, or the rulers of a house or a company or something, people who needed more stimulation and energy, like go energy, would be on the left side. The right side is more generating fluids, so you can think it is more like the lower body, but not the base of the body, so like the bladder and the lower belly. So it's more of a storing and generating of nutrients and fluids. So if you go on the right side, it's lightly cooling, so in hot weather it helps you to cool you down, and it also helps you to generate fluids for your body. So if you're very dry, it's a good position to go on. Usually the right side is a good healing position for the body as well. So it was thought that like peasants and laborers would be on the right side, because if you need a lot of stamina, endurance and such, it's a better position, more physical stuff. Being on the front, your belly is the most negative, the same way being on your back is the most positive. It's a very good position for deep healing of the body, for generation of reproductive fluids, and for deep healing of the inner bones, and just say if you're completely exhausted and you work a very physical life, or you just have like a chronic fatigue of your body, or maybe you think too much and you want to slow down your thoughts and dull your mind a little, then you can sleep on the front side, your face and your belly and such. Okay, now direction wise, mind you, I live in the southern hemisphere, so depending if you live, I don't know how it works exactly south or north of the equator, though if you look at a map from a flat earth perspective, you would assume the North Pole is going to be the north no matter where you are, right? And that would mean, so what I find is that the north, at least where I am, the north, it draws blood and energy. It's like it magnetically attracts everything to it. So if I position my head to the south and my feet to the north, I can feel it drawing the energy to my feet, which is how I sleep, because if I do the opposite, I get a lot of dreams and thoughts. Apparently they position dead bodies with their heads to the north. So just think the north is a magnet which just draws in everything. So whatever part of your body, if it's the feet of your body, it'll draw the energy to the feet. At least in the southern hemisphere, you're gonna have to try it. You will feel it. Trust me. Once you figure it out, if you just work on north and south, you position your head to either the north or the south, and you figure out, is your brain, you'll literally feel your brain full of blood and pulsating, and just you'll feel the pressure in there. which is really uncomfortable. But again, if you want more intelligence, it's a bit the same as like sleeping on the back, right? While having for me at least, the head of the head to the south and the feet to the north is a bit like sleeping on the front. Now, if I position my left side to the north, I find that's more, it seems to make me more like social is the best way to put it. And then if I position my right side to the north, it seems to make me more like intellectual. And, I remember when I was at school, I did that. I didn't notice. It was just, natural, passive. It's just how things were. And I remember when I would have my head when I was a child, I had my head to the north, and I would constantly I'd have to like blow my nose all the time because my brain was so inflamed. so that's kind of funny. So you can think, when did you change positions and when did you change directions throughout your growth period? Because that will influence whether you grow mentally or physically or, in other ways. Of course, check links in the description for social and commercial stuff. I just released a 2023 journal. Probably, I think everyone spent all their money for Christmas. So if you're interested in getting it, but you don't have the money and you want to get it later on, that's cool. That's no worries. Otherwise, I do release it now just because it's, it kind of is the time where I finished editing it and all that. So, but it's probably not the best. Look, I'm not a marketing finance person, I'll put it that way. I don't really care about that part yet, but whatever. Anyway, get yourself a copy today or another day when, if you want. Otherwise, of course, have a good day. I guess in all practical terms, thinking about the origin of the universe is kind of useless. But if we did figure it out, it would be fascinating. So anyway, the idea of God, of course, is interesting. People say, do you believe in God? Do you not believe in God? And I try not to believe in anything because it's like, well, you can figure things out, so to speak. So, and of course, the definition of God is just a creator. So the world would have to have a creator, or itself would have to be the creator of itself. So a better question, instead of do you believe in God, would actually be the question of how did the world come to exist? Because the world itself technically is God, so to speak, or what made the world would be God. So if we think about just the world right now, we have, of course, the physical elements, which is, all the furniture around you, the dirt and the ground, and then we have the air and the stars and all the, the light and all these things. So it's pretty much the world we can see. It's made up of these 4 elements, right? Or the major elements. And through time, you wake up, like yesterday was a day. Yesterday did exist, right? We can all agree with that. So there was a yesterday, there was a day before yesterday. Assumably, was there a day the world was created? Where just nothing existed and something did exist, right? And of course, slowly over time, the world changes. And because we can see tomorrow, the plants grow a little more, and then they grow a little more, and maybe you cut them back, and it rains, and that changes the land a little bit slowly over time, and things just slowly change. But if we could pull back millions of years ago, potentially billions of years, I don't know, to eventually there would be less matter, there would be less animals, there would be less plants, there would just be, who knows, empty space maybe with like clouds of something around. If we think back to maybe the origin of the world, how exactly did it come into creation? And I think the idea of like a bacterial, if you look at like bacteria, you know, the scum growing around a sink of a kitchen, or you look at like mold growth, it's just this growing, this mass which grows upon something. And you don't have to think about it in a small, tiny, miniature scale, but you can see it as just the growth, the slow, steady growth, and you know, the matter separates from the air, and then eventually maybe you have like condensation within it, and you make water, and then the water, you know, creates the rain, and you have all these cycles, and then slowly plants start to grow, minerals form, animals grow, and they become more and more complex, intricate, and such, and eventually you have the world that we have now. So we can think from the idea of nothingness, things just keep separating, right? And the forces which cause this is the idea of vibration, oscillation. So the idea that like we go from day to night to day to night to day to night. We go from summer to winter, or hot season, you know, cold season, or whatever. Of course, there's autumn and spring in between, but you know, just to simplify. So it's this oscillation that creates change. It's, you know, a drill is spinning, and you know, through that spinning, or you have like a vibrational blade, or you know, this stuff, it's a saw, goes forwards and backwards. It's the two thingos, you know, which creates this change, right? And we can think of the idea of the world, maybe, you know, can the world end? Can everything just stagnate and turn to a black, dense, hard substance devoid of life, where you can't grow anything? There is no light, there is no life, there is nothing. Everyone just crumbles into dirt, essentially, into black, like obsidian, like glassy, rocky, metallic dirt. Can the world end? And then eventually from that it would have maybe turned into nothingness, or it compresses into a single point, and then it explodes out into, you know, energy, and then it's like in between from when all matter compressed and then it exploded out it's like when you just go to sleep. And when you try to go to sleep, that's when you're sinking down, you're going into that darkness. And there's a point in between waking and sleeping, which is the point of before the world existed, or when the world doesn't exist. When you sleep, you go unconscious. Eventually you wake up, usually, right? Maybe some people are conscious while sleeping, I don't know. And then the world, you know, assuming the world is cyclical, then it creates and destroys itself, which I don't know. I think we collectively choose whether, you know, if we run the world into the ground, it's going to have to, it's a bit like a failed family or a failed civilization, society, you know, whatever, failed town. If you run it into the ground, it has to turn into fertilizer, essentially, to feed the generation of the next society that comes after it. So does the world then recreate itself? And from all this energy, does it then slowly, you know, crystallize and such? And it brings the idea of the Big Bang. And the problem with the Big Bang is that I think the idea of the Big Bang is that like hydrogen, a little bit of hydrogen explodes into basically the entire world. But the issue is, where did the hydrogen come from? Where did the space that allows the chemical reaction to come from? You get what I mean? So where did all this stuff, and then where did the thing that made that thing come from? So that's kind of an issue. That's what you got to think about, because we keep drawing back. It's the same way, even if the world was created from nothing, where did the nothing come from? Because once you have nothingness, you can create everything, right? Because it's just that nothing just needs to vibrate, just needs to oscillate, and then it'll separate the same way. You know, the idea of like the egg and the sperm cell creating that singular cell, which then separates to 2 and then 4 and then 8 and then 16. It just keeps multiplying, and eventually you create a child, right? The world can do the same thing if you have a nothingness, because you got to realize when you have nothing, you have something. Nothing is something, so to speak. Because there are multiple levels of nothingness. There's nothing where we still have the concept of nothing. We still have, I don't know, maybe you have a cup full of nothing, right? It's still technically something. And then there's the idea of true nothingness, of when you can't even comprehend the concept of nothing because there isn't anything. And that is assumably the origin of the world, or that is what it was like before the world existed. There was just, you couldn't even comprehend nothing. It was beyond nothing. Eternal darkness, essentially. Of complete unconsciousness, where there was no activity, no stimulation. And from that, somehow, because when there's nothing, there is no time, right? So you would think, like, what happened before that, or how long was there nothingness? But there wouldn't have been time. Time's like a measure of change, frequency cycles and all these things. There wouldn't be any time, and there wouldn't be anything. Which, it's just like, I'm wondering, like, where did that come from? How did this come into existence? Which is fascinating. And I guess the only answer is, like, it's the only thing that we've got, so to speak. But there's a second answer. There's a second answer, which is that potentially this has always existed. Which, this one's kind of it's less of a grounded answer. It's more of like a we live in a dream world kind of answer. So I don't know, I don't believe it, but it's an interesting idea I thought up, is that imagine if you look into the past and you keep looking into the past, right? Maybe you build a device to go into the past or to look into it, like the chronovisor, which supposedly the church has, the Vatican has in their little treasure vault. It's a device that lets you take pictures of the past. I've seen a couple of the pictures. They're not very clear, but they do show some things. It's called the chronovisor if you want to look that up. Some electrician guy made it, like this electrical engineer. Anyway, going on. If you keep looking into the past, maybe it's like if you've played that video game Minecraft. In Minecraft, if you keep walking out, you'll just randomly generate like rivers and lakes and forests and deserts and mushroom villages and whatever, crazy little fun things that that you wanna explore. You'll just keep randomly generating the world as you go, and the world will just get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, right? Maybe if we look at the past is just being randomly generated, so to speak. As in, hypothetically, there kind of was an entry point of the world, but also at the same time, it's like the world is made out of mercury, and we're in a weird dream, right? And so, if it were made out of some kind of weird mercury that just takes a shape of, whatever, it's almost like an AI computer simulation, if it were like that, right? So same way that the future is just constantly being generated, it's almost like you could, from the present moment, you could generate a past, right? But of course that doesn't really sit well, because if you look at things from a much more physical, realistic perspective, you can look into, like, there was a yesterday. Yesterday did exist, right? Can we go back to it? No. Can I completely remember what I ate for lunch? Yes. Do I remember what I ate for lunch a week ago? No. Do I remember what I did a week ago? Not really. But I do have notes. I do keep notes in my journal. So, and I do remember vaguely that there was, well, I don't really remember all that much, but point being, I do believe there was a last week. I do believe there was a time a while ago, right? I don't think that's random or something, because again, you'd think like there had to be an entry point. Because what if you just go back 1 billion years ago and then you think, well, this is all just randomly generated? But what if there were people 1 billion years ago and they did experience life day by day in whatever form and shape it was? Maybe they weren't even people, they were some kind of like water beings or energy beings or something, who knows, right? But what if they did experience it, and you're devaluing their experience, right? By saying, well, it's just randomly generated. It's just, it's based on probability of what would be, what would be today, yesterday, or something. I don't know. And then what about the people 1 billion years before them, or the beings 1 billion years before them, right? So, which kind of leads me to the idea that maybe there had to be a beginning of the world. And I guess if we did more experiments on, really, you're going to have to probably do experiments on space and matter through using energy, like extreme amounts of energy, to create like portals and time travel and to affect space in weird ways. So I think once we do a bit more of that, we'll understand things a little more. But otherwise, it's an interesting thing to think about. Is, as I said at the start, it's kind of a waste of time most of the time, because what are you really going to get from it? You're not going to make any money off it. You're not going to, but it is fascinating. It's like if a child asks you, where did we come from? How can you give them a real answer? How can you give them an honest answer? People just go back to the Bible or whatever holy book, and everything came from nothing or darkness, or in the beginning, God spoke, or there was light or something. It's like, or you look at science and you think the Big Bang or whatever, any of these other ideas, but like none of those sit well with me. I can kind of understand what it could be, but I don't fully understand what it is, so I don't know. Anyway, of course, feel free to check the links in the description, and have a nice day. I've always been fascinated in the idea of spontaneous generation. And spontaneous generation is essentially, it's kind of like an old school idea that things just spontaneously generate usually through moisture and heat, and like, so the temperature, and just an example is in the ground, plants would just spontaneously appear, and later on, the idea of seeds and spores, like mushroom spores and such, kind of countered this idea. But I still think about it a lot, and I think there could be some validity to it. Mainly because if I look outside, I notice that if I get rid of, so when I got rid of a lot of the ivy and a lot of the different like pest and parasite plants that were causing trouble and blocking out all the light and just sucking up the nutrients, about a week or a month after, right, a bunch of different plants would spring up. And usually in specific areas, it would be the same plant. I'm just thinking, is it that these plants just have their seeds hiding under the earth? But usually if you put a seed in the earth, either a bird will eat it or it will, I guess, like, you know, if you've seen wood and bark and all that, like, jellify and just turn to goop, essentially, just from, like, you know, the rain and temperature cycles and such. So I would assume it would do that, but who knows, maybe I'm wrong. So they also had this idea with animals where the animal would generate, and I think there's other ideas where maybe, just say if there was like a skull of an animal and it was in like a river, then it could generate somehow there, or something would grow off it. And of course there's like interesting books on it which talk about different animals are growing from different animals. And a notable one, of course, was bees and like flies and all kinds of bugs growing out of and maggots and like growing out of, a little bit graphic, like dead animal corpses. And of course, you know, that's kind of obvious, but it is interesting. Like, you have an animal corpse and just starts, all these, you know, bugs just start growing out of it, right? Is it that you know, the bugs just start inoculating everything, or is it that the fermentation of things causes spontaneous generation? One kind of recent example is I got rid of a lot of ivy and a lot of it was just a bunch of like, 10, 20-year-old just dried foliage, you know, leaves, branches, all kinds of junk, just like thick coverage covering the ground, and this area just hasn't had greenery for probably 20 years. And when I removed it, all of these plants that, I don't know if you have in your country that plant that's like a tomato plant, but it's more like a herb and it grows those little looking nightshady kind of things. They're like little tiny greeny black, you know, tomatoes, and they're horribly bitter, and I have no idea what the purpose of the plant is or its medicinal uses, to be honest, but tons of those sprung up. I mean, like tons of them. It's the same way, like last year I had all the, I think it was a chickweed or something, someone told me that sprung up. And so specific areas just seem to grow specific things. It's weird, and that would be, you know, I would assume it's because of how much light it gets, just the area in general. Just, you know, just if you kind of think about things. But again, where do all the seeds come from? Like, are the birds dropping them? Is that really a thing? I don't know. Are they just there underground, or does it just kind of generate out of, you know, out of space almost? Or is there some other phenomena like a plant spore or something? You know, who knows about that? Who knows? One interesting thing is, if you think about like islands, Hawaii, for example, and I really haven't looked at the geography enough of Hawaii. Maybe there are little islands that connect it to some other big continent, but I don't know. You know, you would assume like Hawaii or some other places are just little islands at sea in the middle of nowhere, and they're inhabited. Like, there's still, you know, there's still other islands as well that are inhabited by people. How did they get there? And of course, one idea is that, well, the ocean wasn't as big many years ago, and there was a lot more land. That's one idea, and everything just sunk down. Could be, but it also could be that, I think, you know, maybe people and animals, for that matter, just kind of generate and come about just through, I don't know. It's like the idea of the chicken and the egg. Well, maybe it's, yeah, who knows? Maybe there's something that goes on. It'd be interesting to know. At least I know in the Golden Chain of Homer, which is an alchemical book. What is it, from the 1700s? I don't remember. Anyway, it has an experiment that you can try to do to spontaneously generate rat-like creatures and plants through, basically, you capture rainwater and you let it like ferment almost and build like a almost like, if you know what a SCOBY is, bacterial kind of biofilm at the bottom. I tried to collect rainwater and I couldn't get that thing to grow, so I'm wondering if they collected it from the roof and so there's a little bit of dirt, or if they kind of left it out enough to, you know, if you leave rainwater out, or water in general, I guess, it eventually becomes a little like an aquarium, it grows algae, and it starts to grow mosquito larvae, those little snake looking tadpole things which are, you know, jolting around. They're kind of interesting because it's just like a nervous system fish that, you know, it's such a simple little creature. It's very fascinating though. It's like the origin of everything, of all creatures. Going on, you leave that around, and maybe that's what you're meant to do, because basically what the author says is to distill the fractional components of it, and then you put back, I forget what you do with the earth, I don't know if you calcine it to ash or whatever, or just keep it there, I'm not sure. If it's an earth or bacterial thing, again, I don't know. And then you put back, depending on what you want, if you want minerals, you put back, I think, just mostly water. If you want plants, you put water and a bit of the volatile, the higher fractional distilled part. And if you want the little rat creatures, you put mostly the volatile fraction, distilled fraction onto it. Again, does that actually work? I think it would be incredibly fascinating to try to get it to work. Of course, you'd have to really understand what he's talking about with the experiment, because it's a little bit, you know, reading the kind of older stuff is a bit difficult to decipher, but it would be a very interesting experiment, because, you know, it's like the idea of getting a bunch of different gases and putting them in a warmed, sealed container, and then trying to build your own little universe out of it. You know, if you think like a primordial universe, or it's like herbariums or whatever, you know, sealed jar aquariums and botanical gardens and such, they're all fascinating. You can build those yourself pretty easily, actually, a lot of those things. So it kind of gets into that, you know. It's fascinating. I guess animals and plants and all that stuff, it's not really my field so much, so I don't really go into like biology, you know, it's not really, but I've always been interested to learn these things and learn how they work. And I figure if you can understand this kind of stuff, you can understand really just how animals work in general, how life works. Homunculus, you'd figure out how to grow a homunculus, right? If you could, you know, figure this out, because you could probably grow a bunch of different animals and you know, maybe crossbreed them, all kinds of crazy stuff. You go full mad scientist if you really want, if you can really, you know, understand the fundamentals of life. Anyway, I'll leave it there, of course. Check the links in the description if you want, social commercial stuff, and have a nice day. One thing I've always found interesting is the scale of everything, and by that I mean, if you're like a home cook, you're just cooking for yourself, you're not going to need to cook a whole lot of food. If you, for example, you cook like a stew for the entire week, it's, you know, a decent chunk of food. It's probably a few kilograms of, you know, different meats and vegetables and beans and all kinds of things cooked together, right? And it's big. If you're cooking for a family and you want to make a stew that lasts them the entire week, it's going to be quite a lot bigger. Again, do it in one of those huge pots. Then if we scale up, for example, if you've seen like videos of certain villages, you know, you've got one person doing all the cooking and they have one of these giant pots, like the giant woks, that's about as big as maybe your arm span, so your left to your right arm, you know, like a meter or meter and a half large, and they just cook up tens of kilograms of, you know, rice and beans and all kinds of other things, right? So you can think on different levels, there's different scales of things. And, you know, there's two major properties, which is weight and And volume. Now, volume means size. So water is measured in litres, right? And a litre, or well, depending, it could be a gallon also. And a litre at least is a kilogram. So, and we all probably know how big a litre of water is, right? But if you got a kilogram of lead, which is very dense, it's very small. You could hold a kilogram of lead easily in your palm of your hand, like a ball. It'd be about the size of a tennis. Well, maybe smaller than a tennis ball, like a what do you call it, a golf ball. A golf ball size of lead would be about a kilogram, but a golf ball of maybe rubber or I don't know, feathers is going to be very light. Going on, if you work in like any kind of business, especially a factory, you're going to be working on large scales. For example, the production of various metals, steel production. You're going to be working with tens of, it could be like, thousands of kilograms maybe of steel per day. It could be tens of thousands, I don't know. It's a lot of steel depending on the factory and how big it is. So when you think of something like a general resource like flour, for example, you buy flour and it could be a 1 kilogram bag, a 2 kilogram bag, or a 5 or even a 10 kilogram or a 20 kilogram, depending. And you got to think, that much flour. You could also think how much grain did it take to grow that, or how many plants did it take to grow that. But also you can think, how big is the factory and the warehouses that store all these things? Do they just have like 20 kilogram, 100 kilogram bags of flour? How many thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of kilogram is there of various different grain flours, right? And all these different places, all these different stockpiles, which is when we start getting into, the idea of warehouses that stockpile hundreds of thousands of kilograms worth of different materials. I was working with sand and mortar, trying to get trying to fix up some of like the potholes and like just the dangerous areas of the house, right? And the outer pavementing areas, and I was shocked to see how little all of the sand that I bought, how little it did. I bought 40 kilograms of sand, which is 2 20 kilogram bags. They're fairly cheap. Well, when you kind of do a lot of this stuff, it's not exactly cheap, but it's cheap for what you get, at least, as long as you transport it yourself. And I went through 40 kilograms of sand and, a good 5 kilograms, how many ever kilograms of mortar, very quickly. I'll put it that way, very, very quickly. Especially if you try to make like stuff out of mortar or lime or whatever, different building materials, you'll be surprised to know that's why they sell them in 20 kilogram bags, because you really run through a lot of it. You've probably seen a 20 kilogram bag. It's about what would you say, maybe 80 centimeters by, I don't know, 40, 50 centimeters or something. It's got about like a 20 centimeter thickness, maybe. Oh, probably not even that, 10 centimeter thickness. From bottom to top. So they're not exactly huge, but it's still, at the end of the day, it's still 20 kilograms, or for Americans that'd be like 45 pounds, right? It's still 45 pounds. It's a decent amount, but when you really use it, and you got to see, it's not a lot, and you got to think like the foundation of the house. That's why they have those giant cement mixing trucks, and they probably use hundreds of kilograms, if not maybe 1,000, of different sand and cement and such mixed together to make the foundation of the house. And then you got to think like all the wood that's used in the house, and it's just I've always worked in the small scale, I guess, being more on computers and being more focused on small things and very fine details and such. Basically like pixels. If you draw a lot, you just look at the pixels and you try to focus on everything, like the tiny things, right? And I'm learning to focus on the big stuff and the larger stuff, and that's quite interesting because it's just such a large scale that you've got to work on with all this stuff. And like really infrastructure that's where it is. Like buying be lots and lots of pipes, or lots and lots of cables, or lots and lots of bricks, and just like thousands of bricks to make something. You need a lot of material and a lot of resource, right? And that relates to your own inner resource, your own root, your own earthly centers and earthly abilities and such. So anyway, I'll leave it there. It's just something to think about, I guess, is the scale of things. And once you can, I find if you upscale things, the quality kind of degrades, and then you can work on the quality again and get it back up. Once it's good enough quality, you can then upscale again, and that's kind of how business and factories and mass manufacturing product works. And you want it, the quality high enough, but you also need the productive output enough. So that's why when people kind of skimp on, good quality ingredients, because it's cheaper. So that's how that works. Right. Bye. Check links in the description for social commercial stuff, and have a nice day.